A very good morning to all the students of class 11th political science. And students, as you know, we were doing the first chapter of your book, and in that first chapter we were on the topic fundamental rights, where in the last video we had discussed two important rights, that was cultural and educational rights and right to constitutional remedies. And in that video I had discussed in detail that why right to constitutional remedies is one of the most important fundamental rights, and the reason we had discussed in detail. So after fundamental rights, as a citizen we also have some duties. Okay, so we have seen the important fundamental rights which every citizen has access, and it is guaranteed by the constitution. But along with that, every citizen also has the responsibility, or we can say some duties to perform. Okay, so let's look at some of the fundamental duties of each and every citizen of India. Okay, so the topic for this particular lecture is fundamental duties of citizens. So after fundamental rights, you always have to remember fundamental duties are also equally important for each and every citizen, because we are always ready to fight and go to the court when there is a violation of our fundamental rights. Okay, but what about the fundamental duties? So it is the moral duty of every citizen to follow and perform these duties also, although these duties are not enforceable by the law or by the court, but it becomes the sole and the important moral duties of each individual to perform these duties whenever it is required. So let's see how these fundamental duties got incorporated to our constitution and when. So finally in 1976, through 42nd amendment to the constitution, we'll talk about the amendments also, that how what is the procedure followed to bring or the change some of the old existing provisions in the constitution. So there was a change brought to the constitution through the 42nd amendment in 1973, and that was passed. And this is also having a complete procedure, that how a particular amendment is performed and what is the procedure. So finally this amendment was passed for fundamental duties. Among other things, the amendment inserted a list of fundamental duties. So in this amendment there was a list of fundamental duties of citizens. So let's see, we'll see what was that list and what were the functions which were to be performed by the citizen as a right, as a fundamental duty. Okay, but also I'm telling you again, though their duties are not enforceable by the law, by the constitution, by the courts. Okay, it is the responsibility and it is our moral duty to perform these duties. So the very first point is here. You can see in all 10 duties were enumerated. However, the constitution does not say anything about the enforcing these duties. Although through the 42nd amendment in 1973, these fundamental duties has been added to the constitution, but constitution does not say anything that these duties has to be enforced by the law or by the court anyhow. Okay, so there is no like something mandatory for everyone to follow these duties. But of course we know, as a citizen, when we have been given fundamental rights and we are enjoying our life because of those rights, we are living in a democratic country, so we must also have some duties and we must perform our duties. So let's see what were the important duties which were incorporated in the constitution. First is to abide by the constitution and respect its ideas and institution. To abide by the constitution, so that we are always ready to be governed according to the constitution. We respect all the ideas and institutions and national flag and national anthem. So all the ideas and institutions of the constitution and of the government. If we talk about judiciary, we talk about legislature, executive, and various institutions of the government which are working for the good of the society. We have to respect them. We have to respect our national flag. We have to respect our national anthem, and it comes within the human being. Okay, this is what we are taught in the schools and by our families, in our parents at home. So this is our duties. No, and this is not enforceable. No one is going to punish you, no one is going to put you behind the jail if you don't do this, but it is our duty. So first one is this. The second duty is to cherish and follow the noble ideas which inspired our national struggle for freedom. So we have seen many inspiring ideas, many inspiring personalities, and various policies which were followed during the national struggle freedom movement. So we must always cherish and we always respect those ideas which inspired the national struggle for freedom. Okay. Then the other duty is to uphold and protect sovereignty. Sovereignty means when a state is free from the outside power. So we know that how hard earned sovereignty we have. We have been a colony for Britishers, under Britishers for more than 200 years. So we have and we can understand the importance of sovereignty. So we all have to work in such a way that we always protect and uphold the sovereignty of our country. We maintain the unity among the people, and we try to integrate India. We do not do such activities which leads to disintegration among the various societies, various communities. Like once we have seen during the independence period, our country was partitioned on the basis of the religion. So we have to do activities in such a way. As a citizen, we have to perform our duties in such a way that we promote unity and integrity of India. We increase brotherhood. Okay, so now the next duty is to defend the country and render national service whenever required. So we always have to be ready whenever our country requires it. It is not important that you have to be in the Indian Army, or you have to be in the armed forces, or navy, or whatever, air force, to serve the country. In our own way, in our own profession, we can do something for the country which is going to be a very positive thing for our country. So we have to be ready always. Whenever our nation requires our help, we should be ready with it. And the fifth duty is to promote harmony and spirit of common brotherhood. We have to promote peace and harmony. Our activities should be like we behave and like we live in our society. Okay, so we should be performing the activities in such a way where we grow the spirit of common brotherhood among the various communities, among the various religions, various castes, because we know there is so much of diversity in India. Okay, so after that diversity, we need to have brotherhood for to unite India, to integrate India, almost all the people of India, and to renounce those practices which seem to be indignified towards women. And we have to oppose those activities which are indignified towards the women. It means if there are any injustice or evil activities which are going on in the society, which are leading to gender inequalities, we have to oppose those activities. We have to take a stand. Okay, so as a human, we all are equal. There should not be discrimination on the basis of caste, color, language, and gender also. So these are the activities through which we can promote harmony, peace, and we can integrate India through brotherhood. Okay, as you know, India is a land of diversity, and diversity means people of different caste, color, language, religion have been living in India from ages. So India has a very rich heritage. Okay, if we talk of various monuments, various culture, various communities, okay, various sections of the society, so we have a very rich heritage and of our composite culture. So we have to protect our culture. We have to protect various communities, maybe minorities, and various infrastructure. In terms of the heritage, we need to preserve it. Instead of destroying it, we need to preserve it, and we have to give these lessons to the others also. If you find someone doing the wrong activities, you must stop them. Seventh is to protect and improve the natural environment. This is the most important thing, and we see various awareness programs going on recently. And during the coronavirus, we saw how shortage of oxygen led to a huge crisis in India during pandemic. So it is also our responsibility, it is also our duty of each citizen, that we have to protect and improve the natural environment. We have to protect the forest, lakes, river, wildlife. Many people do hunting, killing of animals. Okay, so we have to stop that. In fact, we have to preserve them, as well as to have compassion towards all living creatures. We should have love and affection for all the living creatures. Okay, so this is such a nice point where we can do so much for our society. It is not that you have to be in the army to prove that you are giving services to your, or you're rendering services to the nation. On your own way, you can do a lot of things. Like you can protect forest, you can reduce water pollution, soil pollution, noise pollution. So you can do a lot of work in preserving our environment. Okay, Then to safeguard public property, this is also important. Whenever we travel, we see on the roads, parks, okay, markets, we see how people do not care about the public property. It is the property which is meant for the public use, but it does not mean that we use it in a negative way, we destroy it. Okay, so we should always try and safeguard the public property. Then to develop scientific temper and spirit in inquire and reform, we should always move forward towards growth with scientific temper. We should try and make new inventions in our own field, and we should always try to bring new reforms which can be beneficial for the growth of our society, okay, and for our country. And 10th is we have to move forward and strive towards excellence. We have to always try and work towards finding excellence in our own fields, in all spheres of individual or collective. Whatever activities you are doing individually or whatever activities you are doing collectively, you have to try to achieve the excellence in that, so that our nation will also achieve the higher levels of endeavor and achievements. So individually we can do a lot for our country, and we can change a lot of things. We can create a lot of awareness in the society. Okay, as a student of political science, you are studying all these things, so you can I would say transfer these information to the lot of people by your own means. So with this we come to the end of the topic, that is the fundamental duties of all the citizens. Now we'll be starting in this same video directive principles of state policy. We'll cover this also in this particular topic. So the next topic is directive principles of state policy. So first of all, let's see the meaning of directive principles of state policy. State here means government. Okay, directive means to guide. Okay, so it means these are the guiding principles for any government. Whatever policies, plans are being implemented by the government, for that particular principles or the guidelines has been given, and those guidelines are called directive principles of state policy. It means there are certain guidelines or a set of guidelines which are there to help or to provide a support to government to frame their various plans, policies, okay, for our country, for our growth and development. So these guidelines are called directive principles. Direct means to give direction, like a director of the movies give direction to the actors that how they have to act in a particular situation. A teacher gives direction in the class that how we have to stay in the class, what should be the accurate behavior of a student in the class. In the same way, certain directions have been given for the every government to frame their policies. It means it is the framework for the government to frame the policies. So let's see who had brought this directive principle of the state policies into constitution. So of course, you know, our constitution was framed by the Constituent Assembly. So these directive principles of state policy, these guidelines are also incorporated in the constitution by these constitution makers. So the makers of our constitution knew that independent India was going to face many challenges. So if I say here, they were very foresighted, or the far sighted we can say. They could see the future of India, that how Indian government or Indian society is going to face many challenges in the coming future after independence. So they were so foremost among these was the going to face many challenges to bring about equality. The first was there will be a problem of bringing about equality among all the societies, all the communities, because as there is so much of diversity. Well-being of all citizens. Okay, when we'll talk about equality, it means talking about the well-being of all citizens. These also thought that certain policy directions was required to handling this problem. So it was we would say smelled by the framers of the constitution that in future some of the important guidelines or the policy directions will be required for handling the problems like equality or well-being of the society or the citizen. But at the same time, constitution did not want future government to be bound by certain policies. But along with that, the policy makers or the makers of the constitution, they also realize that these guidelines should be placed in such a way that it do not bound the certain particular government. It means these guidelines should not be made compulsion for any particular government, because in the coming future the circumstances, the economic, political, social conditions are going to change. So it should be given freedom that there will be some directive principles of state policy or the guidelines which government has to follow, but that should not be a compulsion or compulsory for a government to follow it. It means these guidelines were incorporated in the constitution, but they were not made legally enforceable. This is a very important term here, legally enforceable. If government does not enforce or does not implement a particular policy, no citizen can approach the court and claim the directive principles or any policy, because those were made legally enforceable. So not made legally enforceable. Like we studied fundamental rights, fundamental rights are legally enforceable. If anybody violates your fundamental rights, you can approach the court and you can claim for your rights. But here, these rights, that is directive principles of the state policy or the guidelines, those guidelines were not made legally enforceable. It means those directive principles are not enforceable at all legally. This means that if a government did not implement a particular guideline, we cannot go to the court asking court to instruct the government to implement a policy. Okay, so if government does not implement any particular policy, it does not mean any citizen will approach the court and claim against the government that government is not implementing a particular policy. Thus, these guidelines are non-justiciable. So, in short, we can say this is important. These guidelines means the directive principles of the state policy. These are non-justiciable. Non-justiciable means we cannot go to the court against the government or that government is not implementing a policy for the citizen. You are not going to get the justice against the directive principles of the state policy. Yes, if you go to the court to get justice against the violation of your fundamental rights, those rights are justiciable. But if we talk about the directive principles of the state policy, these guidelines are not justiciable. That is part of the constitution that cannot be enforced. This is a part of the constitution. It means the directive principles of state policy, it is a part of the constitution which cannot be enforced by the judiciary. It means judiciary cannot enforce it by force to the government. Judiciary cannot give order to the government that it has to implement various policies for the people, because these guidelines are left over to the government, that how they use these guidelines. Those who framed our constitution thought that moral forces behind these guidelines would ensure the government would take them seriously. So it was left to the government that their moral values, and they will realize the responsibility as a government, as the leading force of the government for the growth and development of the society. They are going to use these guidelines for framing the various plans, policies, maybe in the field of economics, maybe field in the society or culture. Beside these, they expected that the people would also hold the government responsible for implementing these directives. So a separate list of policy guidelines is included in the constitution. So a separate list has been included and incorporated in the constitution, and that separate list is called directive principles of state policy. So as I told you, the meaning of directive state principles of state policy, it is simply the guidelines or the instrument of instructions for the government. This statement is government. So these are the guidelines and instruments of instructions for the government to frame their various policies. A particular framework has been given by the government, and this framework is called directive principles of a state policy, and this is a list separately mentioned in the constitution. Now the next thing is, let's see what do the directive principles contain. What is there in the directive principle? As we know, these are the guidelines for the government to take actions or the decisions for the growth and development of the society, economically, politically, socially and economically. But let's see in particular, what do the directive principles contain. The chapter on directive principles list mainly three things. So if we see the chapter means the chapter in the constitution. So when we talk about the list given in the constitution regarding directive principles, there are mainly three things you have to remember. First is the goals and objectives that we as a society should adopt. The first principles in the directive principles list is regarding the goals and objectives that a society should adopt or aspire. There are people in the society and they have various aspirations, demands and desires in their life, and they are mostly dependent on the government, that government is going to do something. Before every elections we see that how people aspire that this government will do something for us. Like we talk about Narendra Modi, BJP, so they are doing many activities, many policies have been framed, many programs have been brought out for the growth and development of the society in terms of economy, in terms for industries, for agriculture, for education. In the various fields they have brought many policies. It means government has, through directive principles, the government has got the framework that they have to work for the goals and achievement of the people or the society anyhow. So whatever the policies and plans will be made, those will be made keeping in mind the goals and objectives of the people for the good of the society. So this is the first things which are mentioned. Certain rights that individuals should enjoy apart from the fundamental rights. Now government has to also keep in mind, although citizens are getting the fundamental rights, but apart than fundamental right, there are lot many things that citizens should have access to, and they should have more freedom to have more rights. They should enjoy more rights other than fundamental rights. So we'll discuss that what should be the other rights. And the third thing is certain policies that government should adopt. There should be certain policies with changing situations and change in time. There are requirements where government has to take immediate actions in framing various important policies, like in the change in the circumstances of coronavirus. So we are seeing every day that how government is taking various plans and policies and decisions with the view of the current circumstances in our country. So these are the guidelines according to which the government has to frame various plans and policies. For examples, now we will make it much clear. We'll make these three points very much clear with the help of the examples. Now you may get some idea of the vision of makers of our constitution by looking at some of the directive principles shown below. So you'll get the vision that why our makers of the constitution has incorporated directive principles in our constitution. You will get an idea here. The government from time to time tries to give effect to some directive principles of the state policy. They passed several zamindari abolition. So in the past you have seen zamindari was abolished, okay. Banks were nationalized, enacted numerous factory laws. There were many laws made for the factory, that previously there used to be exploitation of the workers in terms of their wages or in terms of the time period they were working overtime there. And the wages were fixed. Rules and regulations were made to promote cottage and small scale industries were promoted. Some reservations were given to uplift the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes. As we see in the various colleges, schools and government jobs, reservations are fixed for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes to uplift them, as their situation was not good and up to the mark. Such efforts to give effect to the that principles include the right to education. We talk about right to education, that how it has been made compulsory for all the children up to the age of 14 to go to the school. The government has also started policies of free education, midday meal, okay, right to work in terms of Manrega. Panchayati Raj has been, institutions have formed all around the country after 1992. So these are some partial right to work I have told, underemployment guarantee program, midday meal scheme, etc. So all these programs which are brought by different governments at different phase of the time are all framed under the framework of the directive principles of the state policy. And these directive principles, on I said, are not enforceable or justiciable, but it is automatically worked out, because every government knows if they don't work for the good of the society, economic, political, social good of the society, next in the next coming election they will not be elected. So it is automatically they try to work, because before the election everybody sees that what a work, what a social work or what developmental work a government has done for the society. So it is automatically a force which gives guidelines to the government. These are some of the fundamental duties of the citizen. Now they have mentioned, and this I have taught you before this topic because I wanted to connect with the fundamental rights which we had discussed. Then after that I had taken fundamental duties of the citizen. They have given here some only 2 3, but I has given you 10 fundamental duties of a citizen. They have just given an introduction here, like in 1976 and 42 amendment. Through the 42 amendment, the constitution was passed. Among other things, this amendment inserted a list of fundamental duties of citizens. In all, 10 duties were enumerated. However, the Constitution does not say anything about enforcing these laws. Again, if we talk about fundamental duties, these are also not enforceable. Okay, it's our moral duty to perform these duties as a citizen of India. When we are enjoying the fundamental rights, we are expecting our government to do so much of work for us according to the dietary principles of the state policy. So it is our moral duty also to work out these duties, the 10 duties I had explained to you. As citizens, we must abide by the constitution. We should follow the provisions, articles which are have been mentioned in the constitution. We should defend our country when needed. Promote harmony. Every activity of ours should be promoting harmony, bringing peace in the society, bringing brotherhood among the society. We should work for the integration of the Indian society because we have so much of diversity. Protect the environment. This is very important. This is a broad term, I would say. Environment, we talk about forests, we talk about water, we talk about water pollution. Okay, we talk about air pollution. So there are a lot of things. We talk about preservation of wildlife, controlling deforestation. So there is a lot of things as an individual we can do. These are the duties of a citizen. However, it must not noted that Constitution does not make the enjoyment of rights dependent or conditional upliftment of duties. In this sense, the inclusion of fundamental duties has not changed the status of our fundamental rights. So this all we have already explained. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this particular topic. Thank you.